Hello, everyone. This is Leilani Cawthon, your host from the Learning Council. I'm a CEO and publisher here of our research and news media organization. You know, we have 215,000 readers. Before we started this series of events, we surveyed all 215,000. We got 27,000 responses back on what people wanted to talk about. So we're talking about those things, and we're trying to lead forward into what to think about, what to be, you know, what to sort of put your attention on, both with motivation, which we talked about yesterday, and also logistics. And today we're going to talk about the digital learning experience, because if you understand what's going on with kids being on screens and teachers on screens and everybody sort of trying to learn digitally, it's a different experience. And there's some different parameters to start to think about with regards to what that means and what's happening in social emotionally for people and their sense of, you know, willingness to even learn or participate. There's a lot of kids that are AWOL right now. They're not joining in, or parents are taking kids out of school and putting them in some sort of an alternative. So I want to just give you a little bit of guidance. Take a break anytime today. We're in this for a run of time, and so you can leave, you can come back. Leave the tab open so you're still in the meeting, listening in the background or putting it on mute or whatever. Raise your hand. There's a little hand symbol next to your name. You can raise your hand at any time in the conference panel, or you can put questions into the question panel and we'll answer them as we can get to them. We'd like to include you in the conversation. We may unmute you and say, you know, what's your role? What district are you with, or what school are you with? What's happening with you? What questions do you have? We want to create a real dialogue within this event. We don't want you to feel like you're just sitting and getting the whole time. That would be boring. All right, so we have a lot of sponsors that have joined us for this event. Some of them will be speaking. We've shown some videos already of a lot of these companies so you can be introduced to them, because there's a huge amount of innovation in the market. Some of these companies are moving a lot of machines into the market and a lot of software into the market really fast. And it's giving a lot of new tools to schools, but also a lot of, you know, concern that they don't know what they're doing with it and they need to understand it, and what do they use for what, and all of that is happening right now in every school in America. Even the ones who actually started out with, you know, sort of a decent understanding, they've gotten a lot more things on their plate to try to use, and it's a lot of PD for teachers, and it's a lot of work. So these are our sponsors for the day. Again, I'm going to go back to this. Take a break in time and keep your browser tab open. Be ready for us to unmute you and ask you, you know, where are you from? Do you want to share? What are your concerns? What's happening with you guys for logistics or for digital learning experience, which we're going to talk a lot about today. We'd like to have you feel like this is an open discussion platform, or just type in questions if you're shy. These are, again, our sponsors. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk to Terry about what Element Education has been up to, and Tony Brown. They've got a newer model, and they've been sort of evolving with what they're doing to go all the way at personalized learning, which we think is sort of the highest level of evolution of where we're going now that pretty much all of America has gone hybrid, and some still doing a lot of remote. There's a tremendous amount of that going on, and the discussions around personalized learning are heated with regards to how do you really do that. So Terry, you're unmuted now. I'm going to bring you into this conversation. Have you share out? I have on the screen you and Tony both. Let me check and see if Tony's joined us yet. So we can put him into the panel. He hasn't yet. So it's going to be you for now, and then we'll try to get Tony in when he arrives.
All right. So I'm trying to figure out why he's not here yet, and that tells me that he can't maybe find the link.
Okay, well, let my staff take care of that for now. I'll have them try to reach out to him and have him log in. Okay,
great. And is it okay to share my screen?
Yes, let me give you presenter status. Making your presenter. Okay, you're presenting now, Terry.
Okay, and then Derek was going to show the video because we weren't sure the sound was going to work.
Okay, let me check if I have the video in my preloaded video. Yeah, no, we can't show video unless it was preloaded, Terry.
Right,
On
so
this platform.
you guys have the link and you were just gonna like take control and show the video?
Yeah, we on this particular platform, GoToWebinar has a restriction on doing that. We have to have we have to have the video preloaded. We tried that the other day, where we just showed it from the presenter panel, and the video will show, but the audio won't play.
Okay, well, so yeah, I'm gonna, and perhaps it's been around since like 2013, and I know a lot of people have seen it. But you know, so as we know, no one can argue that the times they are changing, and our crystal ball is a little foggy. And as educators, we're asking ourselves, how are we going to prepare our youth for a future that is just not so clear? And so, you know, who is responsible for getting us to the next level? And the answer is us. And I know a lot of us felt just like these folks on the escalator last spring. And now we've had plenty of time to recover and figure out for ourselves that all we got to do is just take the next step. And, you know, it gets clunky, and but it's doable. Okay, clunky like this. So I'm Terry Novacek. I'm the Executive Director of Element Education. It's a small organization that oversees 2 charter schools. One of them is a K-8 Montessori. The other is a K-12 personalized learning program. And Tony Drown, the school director for the K-12, which is Dimensions Collaborative, is joining me this morning if he can figure out how to get on. So our schools are both authorized by the County Office of Education. And as such, I know that non-classroom based schools have made the front page in California quite a bit in the last couple of years. But as somebody who authorized by the county, we could not even get away with those shenanigans even if we wanted to. So we are small. We only have about 1,400 students between the 2 schools. But I don't want that to be a turnoff to anybody or keep them from thinking that what we do can't be done on a larger scale. If I had to pick the one thing that's key to our approach, I think it would have to be collaboration at all levels. The student plan is not determined solely by the credentialed teacher. It includes the parent and the student as well. School-wide decisions are not just made by a principal without input from advisory and leadership teams. Administrative decisions around budget and policy aren't just made by a superintendent without input from the schools. Our teachers engage in a minimum of 1 day per month for training and collaboration, and then they also have time built into their work schedules for planning and professional development. And I know prior to COVID, whenever I would make a comment like to site-based schools, they would, you know, automatically shut that idea down saying, well, we can't do that because we're site-based. Well, I think we all learned in the last 6 months, there are ways to make less be more when it comes to engaging students and freeing up some time to give our professionals more time for planning and development. So the foundation of our school lies in our Power Traits assessment. It's a learning style survey which looks at 5 different aspects of learning. And for decades, we all know that educators have known that modality is important for personalized learning. But we look at it as only one of the 5 aspects. It is easy to just ask, you know, do you like text, or do you prefer listening, or do you prefer doing? But the assessment we use actually has 8 questions around just modality. More recently, schools have come to realize we need to be tapping into students' interests and talents in order to keep them engaged. But for the most part, those interests and talents tend to be kind of, side dishes. They're on the side instead of being truly ingrained and incorporated into the student's learning plan. Sorry, trying to go back. So outside of interest, talents, and modality, our assessment looks at disposition. And the disposition is basically the way the world sees us. It's hardwired, difficult to change. It's the way we work, communicate, and learn. And a lot of times misbehavior is really just a matter of two dispositions that are at odds with each other. If you are what we refer to as a performing person, somebody that might be referred to as the class clown, you are probably going to do a little bit somebody who's high producing, organized person that likes things done on time and neat and orderly. And so for us, understanding the dispositions helps the teacher and the parent better understand the student, and it helps the student better understand himself. And so once you are able to reframe your disposition, the class clown becomes the teacher's assistant. Daydreamer becomes the class philosopher. The incessant inquisitor becomes the problem solver. Chatty Cathy becomes the class ambassador. So if you care to participate in our little poll here, this is an example of one of the questions in the assessment that helps us get a feel for a student's disposition. You can do it on your computer or you can do it on your phone. You would text to the number 37607. And what you're going to text to that number is Terry Novacek 993. So TerriNovacek 993. And of course, I can't see if anybody's participating, so I don't know whether or not to hold on. Leilani, do you have any way of reaching out and finding out?
Yeah, I'm trying to do that. I'm trying to do it.
Okay. Okay, well, we get one person.
Yeah. And then once I texted that, and then I texted Terry Novacek, and it says I've joined.
Yeah, Terry Novacek 993.
Yeah, and then it says powered by poll everywhere.
Okay.
Okay. And then I just type my A, B, C, or D, or E, right?
Right, so you finish the sentence. I am fun to be with, get things done, ask questions, help others, think a lot. Which one best describes you?
Wow, that's really hard.
Terry, just letting you know I'm here.
Oh, great.
Okay, I answered in text. Was I supposed to go into the poll everywhere?
Try it. I did this morning. I had somebody test this and it worked, and I don't know what she did. She just followed the directions.
I think I just answered in text. So I answered in text.
Well,
yeah, so I gave my answer, so I'm done giving my answer. I don't know if anybody else is doing it or not, but this is interesting because I can see teachers using this because every kid I know has an iPhone.
But then you run into the problem like we have here, where the teacher needs to be as smart as the kids.
Yeah, and using
So
both.
that we can guide them through that. Okay, was there anything else? Did it allow you to click anything else? Because it should be showing up your answer, should be reading it.
Oh, so when I'm done, I'm supposed to reply leave after I put my answer in. And maybe that's sort of like the point where then it shows up. Yeah, I think I did it right. I'm just not sure. Maybe it's not showing up live because you're in the webinar showing it.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Well, it wasn't necessary. It was just really to keep people engaged.
This is one of the things that teachers are probably doing live within what the systems that you're working with, right? So, okay, so what would be the next? Is there only one set of questions, or are there multiple
Right.
ones?
Well, so the point I was going to, I was just going to get a feel for our audience and see, what percentage. But the other point with the disposition is it's not, you don't just look at the top score and, and look at who's done. Oh, you're automatically a producer, and so we're only going to do these kinds of assignments or suggest these types of projects or whatever. You really look at the whole package, because there are things, you could be a negative something. Like I have a student that's a negative relate and inspire kind of student. So that's just as important as knowing what his top disposition is. This student really, really is not interested or feels comfortable in interacting with other students. And, we don't allow that to be like an excuse. Oh, you're a -5 and relates and inspires, so we're not going to make you work with others. It just helps us know this is where that student's coming from, and we need to take baby steps in helping him integrate with other people.
Well, this is an interesting angle because, we talked yesterday in this crowd about Richard Lavoie's book on student motivation. And in the handouts here in the system right now is another analysis, kind of like the analysis that you're showing right now, that helps you drill into the 8 types of student motivation and what they're looking at. And, people are not always motivated only with one thing. And the book talks a lot about that. But what you're showing here is something a little bit simpler. So essentially what you're doing then is you're applying in real time the dynamics of what students are doing or how they're motivated with what you're doing with personalized learning.
Right.
And so does that involve what software you're using then by teacher, or is it like, what sort of guidance do you give teachers? Like, if this, then that, do this. How does that build out towards personalization?
Right. So we do have a library of resources, and there is training around it. So, the teachers start to figure out, okay, these are the best resources for the student that's, highly organized. This really works for the ones that are more spontaneous. And again, we really try hard to not make this one more label. It's a guide. It's not a label. It doesn't mean that, a student that is high producing really enjoys writing 10-page, dissertations. But it gives you a place to start. And what I like the most about it is it's a tool for reflection. So, a student or a parent, they take the assessment, and then you ask them, does this sound like you? Does this feel right? And you have a conversation around it. And then, you know, when you get the parent and the child and you find out their dispositions are, like I talked about earlier, ones that might butt heads a lot, then you can work with each other to appreciate, you know, the talents. Everybody has gifts, right? And so, you know, the really organized parent learns to appreciate the, you know, the class clown child, so to speak, and use their gifts instead of, you know, fighting against them and working with the disposition. And the same thing with teachers, and it helps too. So as you're growing up and you're understanding your dispositions and you start recognizing that in other people, you're able to say, okay, this type of person isn't going to respond well to me if I present myself in this way. So let me make some adjustments. But it's, you know, I guess you could call it, it's like a personality test. And I know there's the Myers-Briggs and you know, this is just what works for us. And it's nice to have a common tool that everybody's using, so you have the common language.
Excellent. Okay, good. So is there, do you want to go? Okay.
Yes. So the other thing, the fifth aspect is the environment. And we all know there's only so much control we have within our environment if we're in a classroom. But we have to remember that, you know, learning in today's times does go beyond the desk and the four walls. And environment, you know, also includes the sounds around us, our body position, the light, the temperature, you know, food, color, time. You know, a teacher decorates her room in you know, bright primary colors, but you know, to some students they prefer pastels. It just makes them feel more calm. And this does help. Again, you know, we can only control what we can control, but a child that's aware that they really need quiet can work it out with a teacher to ask to move to a corner. Or those that do better when they're engaging with other people can work something out to where they have some time to work with a peer. And so this was just another poll along. And again, you know, the environment section doesn't just ask about this, but yeah, there's like 8 other things that we take into consideration. And there we go. So I don't think anybody can argue that the role of the credentialed teacher is changing. And for our, with the exception of a few, all of our staff are considered educational facilitators as well as teachers. As an EF, you know, they do all these things on the right. And they also have times that they're doing, you know, small or large group instruction, more like the teacher on the left. But we need to make sure that as teachers, we're not trying to do what can be done with technology, because as we know, those who can be replaced by technology will be. And so we need to see technology as an assistant, not a replacement, so that we have more time and energy for the human aspect of education. So ours begins with an initial meeting where we meet with the parent and the student. And again, I know, you know, we are independent study, but there's no reason this can't be done in site-based schools. In fact, our K-8 Montessori is a hybrid that meets 4 days a week. And so in a lot of ways, it is like a site-based school, and they do the same thing. They sit down in an initial meeting. They look at the power traits results. We have a social emotional competency survey we use. We look at standardized assessments. We take into consideration the family situation. What kind of resources does the student have access to outside of school? What are the student's personal goals? As well as the depth of commitment, which I'll get to in a minute. So we have spent countless hours and tens of thousands of dollars trying to select and even have a system customized for us for a learning management system, but we have yet to find one that really meets our needs. So we are still using a Word document that we've used for nearly 20 years. It's not fancy by any means, but it works. And so far we're using the, the KISS method, keep it simple. This is not to say that we don't want to get a little bit, tie this into technology more. But for now, these are kind of screenshots of it. And you can see that we have a description of what our achievement levels are, which you could basically translate into an ABCD. These are the light shaded areas. It says choose an item. That's a drop down menu. And so under learning objectives, the drop down menu are state standards. And then the additional notes and experiences are the assignments that the student did to meet those standards. And so now it becomes more important that the standards and what the student is learning becomes more important than the teacher's assignment. And, I'm guilty of it too. You spend hours and hours on this lesson that just looks so great, but how do you know that the students are really getting anything out of it? And when you're trying to do a, one lesson fits all, you are going to have kids that aren't going to get as much out of it as others. Our personalized plan also includes the students' personal and non-academic goals, their challenges, the parents' objectives and challenges, and we include all their assessment scores. And so you have everything here in one spot. So this actually gets much bigger because you can see I only have one subject here, but you would do this for each of the subjects. And then as it gets filled out, obviously it gets kind of lengthy. For resources, as a site-based school, most of us have specific curriculum that's adopted that we have to use, but students can, and really they should, be using additional resources as well. And so that's what we would list here under the human, digital, and material resources. And then as we're putting this plan together, we also take into consideration how much time the student would be engaging in screen time. And so now I'd like to just hand it over to Tony to speak more to the specifics of the school. I don't know, Leilani, do you want us to take a pause? Do we take any questions?
Yeah, I'm not seeing any questions come in so far.
Okay.
So what I would ask you to do is introduce your peer there, so we know who he is, and then go into this, and then also any comments he wants to make. We have another half an hour, so I'm going to ask you a lot of questions myself at the end. Whether or not other people ask questions, just to just sort of widen the scope of what we talk about today, to fit with sort of the appeals that we put out for why you would want to attend the event, or about hybrid logistics and student motivation. You've done a really great job talking about how you're driving that motivation. So why don't you just continue with those things for now?
Okie doke. Well, so Tony Drown is the school director, which is like a principal of Dimensions Collaborative, and I will let him take it from here to talk more about how you develop a plan and the personal learning network.
Thank you, Terry, and welcome everybody. So this is a quick overview of what we do in the context of our learning ecosystem. So this red circled area is called the education facilitator and that specialist, and that is the person who's our credentialed teacher who works directly with the student and the family to collaborate around assessments and working with the family and the student to determine the power traits that Terry spoke about, and together design that personalized plan and record that is customized based on the input, those assessments, and the power traits for that student. And as Terry noted, we have an array of different curriculum options available, and as facilitators become more experienced, they're able to identify which curriculum resources work best with which particular power traits, including different computer applications that we have available. And you can see as part of our ecosystem, we have a high school counselor, basically a lot of the components that a traditional site-based school would have on site at location, except we are more, we're not based on a site per se. So these folks, some are based out of our central office, some work virtually from home, some work in and out of our learning resource centers that we have available to support student learning as well. And I don't know if there are questions here, if you want to go to the next slide, Terry. So this is our kind of our overall big picture, the student at the center, the learning plan we talked about, the parent and the home make up the next circle, and then our program and the education facilitator. And you know, the idea with this picture is that the world is our classroom, and especially with internet access, students can, you know, access information and so forth from all over the world, you know, using blogs. Our kids engage in community service, field experience. As I mentioned, we have learning centers around San Diego County that students can participate in for specialized student support, academic foundations, special ed services, enrichment activities. We are actually aspiring to model some of what the Learning Council has represented in terms of the Learning Expo idea, where we are providing resources for families and students that and social experiences that they have a hard time accessing on their own, so that our learning centers are like learning expos where kids can experience robotics, art, studio, esports. So this is a work in progress. A lot of it is there still, but we are seeking to grow and develop more in those areas. And we have different teams kids can participate in all these other areas, use of Google, social media, working together with peers, and even getting mentoring from their relatives. So that's our overview. And then really at the spirit of what we're about, which aligns well with the Learning Council, is, you know, creating student agency through self-efficacy and a growth mindset. And you can see this picture here, which depicts what happens when students own their own learning. You can see some of the images here. They cultivate cool, geeky interests. They're ready for the global creative economy. They're self-directed. They develop iterative thinking skills. They learn project management, etc. So our goal is to really support students being able to develop their agency. We understand that in order to develop agency, they need to have a strong foundation around student achievement from which to build agency.
In other words, they become prepared for a future we do not yet know.
Well said. Well, if there are questions, or if we can go to the next slide, either way.
Well, that's what we have for slides. I was thinking there were going to be a lot of questions.
Yeah, so far, no questions. It's been really interesting. I think what's really happening, Terry and Tony, we have a lot of people who join, and we unmute them so they can ask questions if they want to. So I'm going to unmute a bunch of people here, make sure they can unmute themselves, because there's a dual mute in our system. You have to unmute as the organizer, and then they have to unmute themselves. So I'm going to unmute them. Don Nelson, you're live unless you want me to mute you. If you want to chime in about what's being talked about here with personalized learning. Okay, no response. So I'm going to make sure that that's muted. Georgina Kessler's on, and she's self-muted. I'm just making sure everybody's not on mute, you guys, so they can share if they want to. Hi, Georgina.
Hi. Yeah, so I can unmute myself.
Yes, you are unmuted. Good. Okay, so any comments on the whole personalized learning flow that they're talking about here?
Really, I'm just loving it. I'm printing everything. I love it.
Okay, great. All right. Yeah, so, we really kind of want to, create a little bit of raw conversation here. But, the thing I want to say is that, there's a mutation that's happened here, Terry and Tony, that probably hasn't been easy. And you haven't spoken about that. Can you sort of start talking about the journey? Because you had to drag probably people going, in new directions. It wasn't a piece of cake, in other words.
Are you referring to last spring?
The whole time, yeah.
Well, so, I mean, we have a few mutations in our life. Our organization's been around since 2001, and when it started, it was really a relaxed program supporting homeschool families who were the very relaxed folks. And so our program mutated from that to being one where the school is actually providing more support than, let me give you materials and a couple of assignments. And so, but then that was a good place for last spring. Our school did not have to close, because even though we closed our learning centers, that was a pretty small shift to make that, those classes virtual. What we do miss out on is a lot of what the learning centers offer is equipment that you don't have at home. You can't give every child a 3D printer, but you can let them come into the learning center and use it. So we did lose, access to a lot of that. And we have a really incredible art instructor that, but he still had, 50 kids online doing art with him during all of that. Tony, did you want to add anything?
Well, I would just add that a big challenge with a non-classroom based approach, where we're seeking to partner with parents and collaborate with parents and truly personalize education, is around, developing and forging those strong partnerships to support student achievement. As Terry, I think, alluded to some degree, and I don't want to stereotype, parents per se, but the shift we've had to make with some of our very strong homeschoolers was to help support them in seeing that diagnostic assessments and support around specific foundational achievement skills was really relevant and important to their student success. And I think there was a bit, because our culture made a shift over time to emphasize that, there was a bit of an adjustment to incorporate those diagnostics, and then with that, identifying the use of interventions, which some of our software resources and computer applications has helped us with. In particular, I'll refer to ST Math. We incorporated ST Math to a strong degree last year, and that contributed to seeing our students make significant progress in their math skills. And with some folks, that was, they liked their, for lack of a better terminology, boutique curriculum, and we had to kind of, present to them the benefits of ST Math, and then once they embraced that, they really benefited from it.
Yeah. Another thing that we did experience that I know, and you talk about this all the time, the kids that are AWOL, we had families that literally headed for the hills, and we couldn't reach them. We're calling, we're going to the door, And they really had a strong reaction to, you know, the COVID news, and they did come back out of the hills, and we talked through it with them. But what we learned is, well, what we made sure we did was that connection. And so that learning plan that I talked about earlier, that can change throughout the semester. We do them by semester, but you have to adjust it as necessary. And so, you know, the kids that had Learning Center instruction as a resource, obviously they didn't have that resource anymore. So what are they getting, you know, what are they going to use instead to do that? As far as, you know, what's going on in the family, if you have parents that are, you know, really freaked out and taking the kids up to the hills, what can you do? You know, all you can really do to support them is just say, hey, take some books and all read together and have some discussions. And, you know, sometimes you just kind of have to lighten the load for them and help them talk through it and just recognize all the different ways, you know, learning can happen.
Yeah, that's a different angle on the story, you know, than I've heard from others. I mean, you know, kids going AWOL has also, you know, been because of that social emotional impact. People get really freaked out. I mean, I think I've heard more of the real impacts from East Coast districts where, you know, one superintendent mentioned, you know, they were within their 50-mile radius. Almost every one of their staff members had someone in their family die. So it was a pretty serious thing. And I don't think we've experienced that in California at the same orders of magnitude. You know, it's definitely a moment for that fear and getting back to enthusiastically participating. You know, it's kind of like the nation actually needs a little bit of healing time too. So I'm really grateful that you're sharing that part, because being willing as an institution to not be so extreme and dogmatic and just let people, okay, well, those guys, they're on the healing you know, side right now, and let's just let them do that. There's been a lot of consideration. There could be loss of learning and loss, you know, we could be losing a whole year here. What are your thoughts on the strategy you have within the personalized learning planning for every kid for catch up? I mean, do you feel like it's easier to do it in this structure than it would be in the traditional grade and class structure only?
Absolutely. When we get kids that are older that have been in, you know, site-based and really structured programs, their first learning period, it's what we refer to internally, but as detox. And you know, they're used to getting up at the crack of dawn and, you know, getting on the bus and making sure their hiney is in a seat at 7:53 in the morning and marching to a bell, and now they've got flexibility in their schedule and they have a say in what they're learning, and it's not easy. It's a totally different world for them. But after they get through that initial detox, they're able to really focus on the areas that they need to focus on, like Tony was talking about. You know, we do these assessments on the foundational skills and make sure that they have those skills, and then guide them in a direction where they can use those skills and learn more. Kind of going back to, they can learn it when they want to and how they want to.
Yeah, so it's a different sort of, now that you're in the sort of personalized pathway scenario, you probably are also experiencing situations where some kids are Zoom aheaders, like they just like, right, you got to, you know, shift their whole plan mid-year because they just topped out. That can't happen in the public education system for most of them, you know, because of the structure. But when you are transformed into a, personalized pathway structure, that can happen. Does it happen very much for you guys where you have Zoom forward kids?
Absolutely. I'll let Tony talk to that.
We have, it's our approach is we don't want, I guess we talk about in terms of not holding students back, and we just let them go. If they have a passion and a drive and they're achieving and excelling, that's the benefit of our program. We can adapt to that and be flexible, and support that, because that's a great thing to see kids, if that's what you're referring to when you say Zoom ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
yeah, well, even from the perspective of like at a certain point you say, well, this is 9th grade work instead of 8th grade work, now we're moving you ahead a grade. That is a different thing than public education. I mean, some public education will recognize some of that, and they do, grab kids and go, you're moving ahead a grade, or hold kids into the grade they're already in because they're not achieving. But it's not as flexible.
Yeah. Again, going back to that personalized learning plan, personalized plan and record, everything's designed on that. And when kids are in high school, there's a little more restrictions based on the courses. But even then, we have built into our system, if students meet the requirements of a course, they can add and drop courses so that they can earn credits and make their progress. Again, that needs to be evaluated. We don't do that lightly, but it's possible. And we have a lot of students at the high school level that participate in concurrent enrollment with the local community colleges. I think we have over 50% of our students, high school students, participate in at least one community college course. So yeah, we're all about, when you say personalization, for us, it's personalization with a capital P. And I think one of the underlying themes is that going into the future, one of the biggest skills is going to be learning how to learn. And so with our self-directed philosophy, personalization, and not holding kids back, that's what we want to encourage, is kids to learn how to learn so they can adapt and adjust to an uncertain future.
That's excellent. Yeah, it's also complex, and this is the reason that the average public institution, when we went into quarantine, they were just sort of trying to transfer the brick and mortar structure into online Zoom meetings, and
right.
the use of a lot of Google Docs. So really, we're trying to talk about what does this structure look like. So you showed the personalized learning plan. Now, how are you arraying the resources of teachers and things behind those plans? Is there still somewhat of a course structure, maybe detached a little bit from time, or is it attached to time on the calendar with a bit of a whole group still orientation?
Barry, you want me to take that, or do you want to take that? So the time piece, the only thing that's really attached to scheduled time would be if a student has a scheduled concurrent college class or a learning center offering. Apart from that, it's very, very fluid. It's based on the student's learning plan. Again, I guess maybe something that might fill in here and be helpful is our educational facilitator, in collaboration with the parent, provides all those curriculum resources, textbooks, computer applications, community-based vendors, mentors. They collaborate around finding mentors, building a personalized learning network. And then, the idea of learning anytime, anywhere really is something we practice. In fact, we're partnering with an organization now that provides tutoring a chat tutoring service almost 24/7 as well. So it's really about going back to power traits, really facilitating ways for students to learn that are aligned with how they relate to the world best.
Okay. Okay, so in my mind, what I've constructed now in terms of your structure is that you're writing, with your personalized learning plan, you're writing a prescription of resources that the student navigates, but it's not necessarily going to intersect with lecture style whole group, or does it once in a while?
I'd say both. It doesn't necessarily, and it does once in a while.
Okay, so that is the ultimate structure that the Learning Council research has shown will occur. The issue, though, for most institutions, particularly the large districts, is how do they script the intersection point? How do they make that occur? So let's say you have students, they're on their personalized learning plan, they've read the thing, they've written this assignment, they've done this research project on the side, they've been turning in assignments, and then bloop, at the next step is a planned lecture that's in this pathway, okay, this personalized learning plan. But no other kids have arrived to that point. They're way ahead. And the other students that would even be close proximity to that are 4 steps behind. So it's going to be a week. Do you do the lecture for one kid? Is it pre-scheduled, or do you wait for the cohort, the earliest cohort to arrive? I mean, these are the logistics questions that the Learning Council has really been grappling with, because everyone wants to go to personalized learning plans fully, and they're getting dragged into it anyway because IEPs have gone up by orders of magnitude in percentage of all children everywhere anyway. And it seems to be what America wants based on their behaviors and all the other consumerized options. But the issue is that intersection point and the logistics of it. So talk to me about how you're sort of managing that.
So, Terry, do you want that, or you want me to try?
Well, I think I'm trying to make sure I understand what you're asking for. So just kind of using algebra as an example, if a student, what you're saying is a teacher does a lesson on, a standard in algebra, and a student's not ready for it, but then they're ready for it later, but the teacher's already done the instruction on it, what do you do? Is that how?
Yeah, no, that's a different scenario.
Okay.
In the scenario that I'm thinking with is a personalized learning plan is here's your brick path for math. Each brick is a something. It's a read this and take this quiz. And the next brick is do this little project and turn in your results. And the next brick is there's a lecture.
Right.
16 kids are still on brick 1 when one kid he's on brick 3. Okay, so this is like self-navigation through a system of resources.
Right. Well, so that is a problem when everybody has the same path. But what we say, if we have 500 students, we have 500 different learning plans. And so that's even messier than what you're describing. And so the answer to that is, at our learning centers, you don't come into an algebra class, you come into an algebra lab, and you have, you bring your own device. We make sure everybody, it's a one-to-one, not that we provide every single one, but we make sure everybody has a device that they can take home, bring into the learning center, log on. We've got, a wide range of digital resources for you to do your algebra class, but you have your instructor, you have a specialist there that you can turn to for assistance. If you like learning with your peers, you buddy up with your peers to trudge through something. And, again, it just kind of, it goes back to the self-directed. And of course, the first question somebody says is, well, what do you do with the kid that comes in and sits in the corner? And it's a culture, and that's not an option. And we have learning assistants that also, you have more than one adult in there, and you have a conversation. Again, it's back to that connection piece. So Joey, why have you chosen to come in today and sit in the corner and not do anything? And that becomes more, Joey becomes more important than plotting a graph. And you work through that, and then you get, Joey back on track to learning how to, plot a graph.
Okay, so that's more like the house leader style. It's like you said, lab style. Everybody's on their own individualized path within a general context of maybe algebra, all the way through trigonometry, or in a group, right? So you have this thing, and then there's a person there. But how do you schedule the lecture portion? Because what I'm grappling with is what all the public institutions are grappling with. They've been lecture style forever.
Right.
They don't want to lose some of the lecture style. They want to blend.
Well, so this, just to be blunt, this kind of goes back to that statement of, those that can be replaced by technology will be. And, the kids can get that lecture, and, the idea of a flipped classroom has been around for more than a decade now, where, the kids are getting the lecture at home through Khan Academy or something else, and then they're coming in to work through the parts that they couldn't do on their own or from the lecture.
Right. So it's really what you're saying is that the lecture sort of gets disaggregated out of there, not maybe entirely, because there's still togetherness, right?
Right.
And if there's still that togetherness, there could be like punctuated moments of, I just want to draw this out for you how this works, because people normally stumble on this in trigonometry. So let's just go over this all together. I don't care if you're already ahead of this or you're behind. We're just going to have a togetherness moment to go over this thing that is a tripping point for everybody, right? So you have this little whole group moment, but maybe it's not very long, and it's not like the traditional classroom is run. It's more like you're running this classroom like a house leader. Like this is the math domain, and or maybe it's like all subjects, and you've got one house leader, and then the math dude floats in and out, checking on all the students that are right now at that time in math. But I get it. I think what I'm talking about logistically is the big tripping point. I mean, this is what people run into when they're trying to think about going to fully personalized learning. Like, how do you do that? Am I going to be like doing direct instruction for every kid? There's only so many hours in the day, because they're thinking in the paradigm of lecture style.
Right.
And I see what's happening all across America as this transformation moment is they're letting go of some of it. They're letting go of some of that lecture style. And they obviously, with kids all remote, they let go of classroom discipline, because the kids aren't all together. No one can pull anybody else's hair right now or spit on anyone else, because they're not even together. They're on Zoom, but they could misbehave on Zoom. So that's a whole motivation piece. We got to figure that out. But this piece of, they're going to let go something because they have to do some asynchronous learning. So they're going to get the mind research, ST math, and maybe some other resources from ebooks to whatever, reading programs. But that's a letting go-ness that is partial. They're still trying to do a lot of Zoom lecture. And I don't see them letting go of that very far anytime soon. It's too big of a pool with too many people in the pool, too far. Right now, I see a mutation, like we're going to get maybe 40% of the way in most of the country, because people just aren't where you guys are at right now. They haven't arrived all the way to this point. But I wanted you guys to join us today because I think this is where it's going. It's sort of inevitable where it's going. Because if you look at all of the perfect storm of what's happening with the mass retirements of teachers, can't get more teachers. Some teachers won't come back anyway because they're older and they're afraid. I mean, they could get COVID. So it's serious for them. And then you add in all of this advancements of all these technologies, throw in the having to be remote, hybrid, or any sort of formula now, and you have a forced migration. but the migration path is going to be a little bit of trail of tears because some things are not going to work. Some things are going to work, and it's going to be messy, very messy, until people sort of arrive at that point. So I think we have a couple more minutes. I'm going to check on questions here. Catherine Sell Duty. I'm going to see if I can find you and unmute you, and you can make your statement, Catherine. I'm finding you. There you are. Catherine, you're unmuted. Do you want to say what you're going to say?
Great. Yeah, I think the structure question, especially in high school, is tricky and thorny, what you're talking about. You know, one of the things that we think about a lot has to do with how do you have the social learning moments, right? So it's not just lecture. It's also how do you get kids to share work that they've done? How do you get them to do peer review? How do you get them to, you know, jointly discuss something? And I think one thing that's interesting is just the way you can conceive of personalized learning, right? So if you sort of decouple the competencies from the content structure, then it's not on a completion basis. And so part of the structure problem, I think, has to do with the way competencies are set up. And if they're still set up on a completion timeline, so like complete this and then move on to the next thing, and then complete this and move on to the next thing, and that's the way you actually, how do you say, meet your competencies or gain proficiency. If the competencies actually work differently, then all the social moments about the classroom, not the lecture, because I agree with what's being said, you can get lectures anywhere. So, but there's some really good social types of learning that are worthwhile to coordinate, right? And to have lots of kids together in that moment. And so those moments can be coordinated pretty regularly, like a real course would, but you can still have students moving forward. So I think it's, to a certain extent, the back end structure about, you know, what are you personalizing exactly? That's a question that you can answer as well. And I'll just stop there. But.
Yeah, interesting. Interesting viewpoint. So yeah, you have all these things are in the bucket of consideration in the transformation. And some schools are going to want to go certain directions and some are going to want to go other directions. Thank you for sharing, Catherine. Okay, so we're at the top of the hour. So we're going to close this part out and say enormous thanks to our sharers that we've just had, Terry Novacek of Element Education and Tony Drown. You guys were awesome. Thank you so much for sharing.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
Hi, I'm Tice Miller, founder and CEO of mobilemind. mobilemind is the modern professional learning hub that's designed to enable every single teacher to effectively integrate technology like Google into their instruction. In 2015, I started this company to solve the biggest challenge stemming from mobile and cloud technologies hitting the classroom, and that's the lack of adoption by teachers. The traditional means of professional development were falling short in the face of the complexity and the pace of change of all this new tech, and PD suddenly required a new approach. So we partnered with Google. We spent 3 years doing research and development on how to best address this new and growing issue. Today, mobilemind solves the biggest failure points that prevent teachers from the effective use of G Suite tools, which can negatively affect student outcomes. And some of these include lack of teacher buy-in, no personalization, no time for PD, and now more than ever, the need for accessibility to PD anytime, anywhere. So most districts have accepted that the majority of their teachers weren't completely leveraging their instructional tech tools. And the current pandemic has further exposed this reality. And the new normal means we must ensure all teachers are comfortable with using technology, whether they're in class or remote. Before I show you a short video, let me say this. mobilemind's not like anything that you've seen before. This is not traditional online learning that teachers don't enjoy. We have taken methodologies such as SAMR and activity-based learning with personalized feedback and infused them into the most innovative cloud-based learning solution. So please contact us for a live demonstration of mobilemind and learn how we're impacting schools and districts all over the country. Thanks so much and take care.
Google's G Suite and Chromebook one-to-one programs are revolutionizing education like never before. But despite many benefits for teachers, schools, and students, most schools are falling short of their implementation initiatives due to a lack of effective professional development. But how do you effectively cater to teachers with different technological skill levels, learning styles, and schedules? Designed specifically for Google use in K-12, mobilemind solves these challenges by developing the modern professional learning hub for schools that is personalized, practical, and incredibly convenient for educators. Unlike traditional professional development, mobilemind is cloud-based, so teachers are able to learn at their own pace whenever they have time in their schedule right from our Chrome extension. And since content is broken down into micro-courses with practical applications, progress can be made minutes at a time instead of committing to hours per session. mobilemind is tailored for individual users, accounting for skill level and previous knowledge to challenge each educator appropriately. Learners demonstrate competency by completing performance-based Google challenges and receive ongoing individualized feedback from mobilemind's team of certified educators. Finally, mobilemind's data and reporting allows teachers to view their individual progress while providing schools and district leaders with the key metrics they need to evaluate the impact of virtual professional development throughout their district. mobilemind's combination of cloud-based learning and tailored microcourses results in an average increase of 362% in the use of Google in educators' day-to-day teaching. Visit us at mobilemind.io and request a consultation and demonstration of our innovative professional learning solution.